Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's Dynamics 365 Tech Talk. Today's topic is Introduction to the Landed Cost Module in Supply Chain Management. My name is Brad, and I'll be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this session through Teams live events, and the audio can be heard through your device speakers. This session is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation. When you join this event, your name, email address, and/or phone number may be viewable by other session participants in the attendee list. By joining, you're agreeing to this experience. The recording will be available on the Tech Talks Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. If you have questions for the presenters or need support, please use the Q&A panel located on the right side of your screen. Our presenters will be responding to your questions during today's presentation. There will be time also at the end for further questions. Thank you for your patience during these announcements. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Aaron Murch, Senior R&D Solution Architect, and Satish Penwar, Senior Program Manager. Aaron, over to you.
Great, thanks, Brad. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here today. As Brad mentioned, my name is Aaron Murch. I'm on the America's Fast Track team here, and I have my colleague Satish, who will be leading up the demo portion up to the call today as well with me. From an agenda perspective, what we want to get covered during the call today, going to start with an overview of what landed costs is or what they are. Then move it into the benefits of the landed cost module within supply chain management. Introduce you to some key terminology. Show you some steps for getting started in your own demo or test environments. After that, Satish will be leading us in that demo of a purchase order example. I will then compare and contrast what we see during the demo with the purchase order to what's also available for transfer orders. And then kind of wrapping up, we'll compare that inbound landed cost experience versus the transportation management module functionality. Talk about roadmap, and then hopefully still have some time for some questions at the end of the call today. All right, so with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. So as I mentioned, the first step we want to start with here today is with what landed costs are, or what a landed cost is. So as you can see here from this graphic that I put together, frequently when purchasing goods from overseas that need to be imported into your home country or your customer's home country, there's a set of steps that have to happen in order for those goods to leave the vendor warehouse and arrive at your warehouse, right? So the purchase price of those goods are only one small step of that overall journey. So you can see here, once the goods are shipped from the vendor, they might move into, let's say, getting, if we start at the bottom left, sorry, as the goods leave the vendor warehouse, they might be placed on the trucks where they are transported to outbound ports, where they are then loaded onto a boat or a ship or a vessel, shipped overseas, arriving at an inbound port, where they then also have to incur some additional tariffs or customs or duties or freight or customs or duties. Also might then get loaded onto a train or a local transport as well to arrive at the warehouse. So you can see throughout this graphic that cost may be getting incurred for those goods throughout that journey. So what a landed cost provides is that complete view of not only purchase price, but all of those steps along the way, or all those additional costs that may be added to the cost of those goods. So it gives you a complete view of profitability or overall cost for those goods that are sitting in your inventory. So from a module perspective, within the application, what the landed cost module provides for us is that not only in addition to the costing that I mentioned before on that previous slide, but it also improves the visibility and the tracking of those goods. So throughout that journey, we now have the ability to record as each of those different steps are executed, as it's leaving the the vendor, arriving at the port, it's on the water, it's getting received, you can be updating the status, and we can be setting up lead times that will give us an accurate picture of when we realistically expect to receive those goods. So either from the purchase order or from the transfer order line, you'll be able to actually view the confirmed receipt date based off of how far ahead or behind we are in that overall transportation journey. Next point here is the ability to accurately track both those estimated and actual landed costs associated for those inbound voyages. So not only can we set up these costs up front of what we expect those to be, but then as those bills come due, or as we get those invoices from those shipping carriers or et cetera, customs duties, freight, et cetera, we can be logging those in the system, and we can be comparing and contrasting those estimated costs to those actual costs based off the invoices that we receive. And we'll be making the associated general ledger postings as well throughout that. Third point here is it provides for the ability to company take legal ownership of those goods overseas as well. So for those of you that are familiar with or have been working with the supply chain management, this has been an area that we have not had a great story around in the past. So with this module, we actually have the ability to post AP invoices for those purchase orders ahead of the goods actually being physically received at the warehouse. And again, on the next slide, we'll go through some terminology, but essentially we call this a goods in transit order, that we can then track these goods as they are being shipped, as they are in transit. We have the ability to track that and that ownership change and take the legal ownership of those goods before them actually physically showing up at the warehouse. And then finally, we have numerous inquiries and reports available for the overall historical performance of these various aspects. Okay. So just from a key terminology perspective, some of the main building blocks are things that we'll be discussing throughout the presentation and the demo today. First and foremost, the most important concept is what we call a voyage in the system. So this would be similar to what we call as an inbound load from a transportation management perspective, but this is what allows us to set up, this. In most cases, it's it's essentially like a vessel or a ship, but it could be any number of things depending on how those goods are shipping. But it allows you to specify carrier tracking information, assign all of those various different items on the purchase orders that are going to be getting placed onto this voyage, and then you have the ability to track that, as I mentioned, over time. The next concept is what we call a shipping container. Or shipping containers. They are what they sound like here. So those are the big metal kind of containers that a lot of customers use, or that you're probably familiar with seeing, that are used in overseas travel. So this is where you have the ability to actually go ahead and place items and quantities in a shipping container. And then those shipping containers, you could have one to many on a single voyage that you're then tracking, on the water as it moves. Next point here that I mentioned on the previous slide is what we call those goods in transit orders. So that's a new type of order in the system, as I mentioned. So now as you place or as you invoice those purchase orders, before you physically have them, if you need to take ownership anywhere along the lines, again, depending on your delivery terms or your Inco terms, you could take ownership anywhere along that transit the story that I showed earlier. And so what this order type now allows us to do is to post that AP invoice, and then, like I said, track those goods, place it into a goods in transit warehouse, and then receive that goods in transit order when they arrive at the warehouse. And then finally, I mentioned the costs before as well. So this would be all of those cost setups, all the various different costs that you could set up for, as I mentioned, the freight, the customs, the duties, any fuel surcharges, insurance costs, et cetera. They could all be set up at the voyage level, at the shipping container level, or at the item level. and you can specify the rules for how those costs will be calculated and then automatically applied to either your purchase order or transfer orders. And like I said, you can set those up ahead of time for your estimated costs of what you expect those to be, as well as you have the ability to also then go ahead and create those AP invoice journals in the system, link it to your voyage, and then have those actual costs updated, and then you can compare your estimated to your actual cost for any given voyage that you track in the system. All right, so getting started with the module. So just from what we want to get covered here for today related to the setups in the module, this will just be a high-level introduction, just at a very high level. I've put some links into these slides as well, so later on you can go find the docs articles associated with this. Also, at the end of the slide, have some references to some additional more in-depth configuration type presentations that have been done related to the landed cost module as well. So just going to do a very high level for our purposes today, just to make sure that you know where to get started. So first thing to note that it is managed via feature. So you need to enable the landed cost feature within feature management. So once you enable the feature, the landed cost module then shows up within your application. From a configuration perspective, and Satish will get into this in more detail during the demo, but we need to update our delivery terms to show which delivery terms need to have a goods in transit order automatically created for them at the time of AP invoice. We need to go into that landed cost module, configure all those various different costs and how they're going to get allocated, as well as where we can set up our voyages and shipping containers, etc. And then we also have some procurement and sourcing configurations that need to get set up as well. There are some additional setups outside of those three main building blocks around the module configuration parameter settings. We also have, if you're going to be using the landed costs in an advanced warehouse or a WMS or WHS, depending on what you want to call it, if you're using it in that sort of environment, there's some additional setups here as well that are listed. So you need to add some menu items for those goods in transit orders. And then we also have to set up some location directives and work templates for that order type, that new order type in the system as well. And as I mentioned, link to the landed cost docs article that will walk you through step by step all of these various different setups that are required. All right, and so with that, I think we're all set for the demo. So I'm going to turn things over to Satish at this point in time.
Thanks, Aaron, for a quick introduction to the module. So next, we are going to talk about the demo. While the landed cost supports different warehouses in terms of whether we are using basic warehouse or advanced warehouse, for today's demonstration, we have selected a scenario in which we are using overseas transportation through water. And we'll be going through the goods in transit order references, landed cost overview, where you can specify those landed costs and how the entire module would work. So to get into the specifics of a scenario, we are importing goods from Shanghai, China to Austin, Texas. And the goods are coming via freight, and there is approximately 6-week in-transit time associated with this. The Incoterms or delivery terms for our demo scenario today is EXW, which means the owners would, the buyer would take the ownership as goods are being loaded, and finally Contoso would be responsible for tracking the status of the entire voyage and containers throughout the shipping process. So it will be a full end-to-end process, all the way from voyage creation to receiving of those goods physically in our warehouses. So to represent this graphically, here you can see we have port, and loading of the goods typically takes approximately 3 days. Then the goods sail for approximately 4 weeks. And then once goods lands in Long Beach, California, the offloading, the custom clearance, etc., takes roughly a week. before the goods are moved via local transportation from Long Beach to Austin, Texas. So this is the entire supply chain from a Contoso perspective. With that, let's see how this works in the application. So here, for our demo today, we have already created a purchase order. So in our case, the purchase order is 202. Here, a couple of things before we get into the creation of Voyages, etc. There are two main setups that we should be considering if we are considering the goods in transit order management. So at a header level, we have terms of delivery, which in case we have set it to EXW. So if we look at the setup, here you can see that the goods in transit management is set to yes. This would drive the goods in transit order so that we are able to invoice the goods prior to receiving the physical inventory. The second important setup here is the warehouse creation. So here you can see we have selected warehouse 24. This is advanced warehouse enabled warehouse. And what we have done is, in order to support the landed cost, we have created two additional warehouses. One is GIT, goods in transit, and the second one is UND, just in case either we have over delivery of goods or under delivery of goods. Now, these GIT and UND warehouses are linked to that warehouse 24 in these fields, good in transit warehouse and under delivery warehouse. So those are the two main fields that needs to be set in order for the module to work. Now with that, let's see what happens once the view has been created. What are the next steps? So once we know the goods, we need to start creating the voyage, and there are different ways in which we can create the voyage. If the voyage needs to be created only for a single purchase order, we can directly create it from the purchase order, or if there are multiple purchase orders that needs to be added in the voyage, then we can create it from a landed cost module as well. So let's quickly go into the landed cost module and see how the module looks like. So this is the overview of the landed cost. There are a lot of forms with respect to voyages, shipping containers, folios. As Aaron talked about, today is just the introduction, so we will be covering some of it, but not everything will be covered in detail. With that, let's see how we can create the voyages. So in order to create a voyage, we click on all voyages, and here we can click on new to create a new voyage. Automatically, an internal voyage number is associated. We can specify any description for our voyage, put in any kind of booking reference. If the vessel or if the ship or whatever that mode of transport is known, we can, if the actual vessel number is known, that can be inputted here. If not, we can just use it as a placeholder for now, and later on when we know the actual vessel, it can be updated here. One of the most important field while creating the voyage is the journey template. Where are goods coming from and where the goods are going to. So in this case, considering the goods are coming from Shanghai and first coming to Long Beach, so that's what we are using here. So the journey template will be CLSHA to US Long Beach. Mode of delivery, we are specifying ocean. Shipping company, if known, that can be specified here. There are a lot of other fields that can be specified if those are available at the time of voyage creation, or they can be updated later on as well. Click OK, and that kind of creates the header of the voyage. Here you can see if we are working with multiple purchase orders, or if we are working with a specific vendor or warehouse or transfer orders, etc., or even items, we can apply different filters here and kind of filter out the orders that would suffice those criteria before we start building the container. In our case, we are putting this entire purchase order, which is TO2, on the voyage. So select the inbound order, which automatically select all the lines associated, and then add it to a staging list. staging list basically is container building process. So now we just took the entire purchase order, and what we will be doing is we will be creating containers based off the items that we have just added to the voyage. So here, either we can add all the quantities and all the items to just one container, or if you need to split, we can click on edit here, modify the quantities. So in this case, what we are doing is we are putting this item A002 in full, and then 50 quantities of item A001 into our container one. So click on add to new shipping container. That brings up, here we can specify the container number. Again, if the actual container is known, that can be specified. If not, we can just specify dummy container number, and later on can get this updated. What's also important is what type of container it is, whether it's a 20-foot container or floor loaded or whatever you want to, whatever type of container it is. And these things can help them determine what is the estimated freight for these containers. For example, 20-foot container will be cheaper as compared to 40-foot container. So here we are just using 20-foot container. Specify the ship date. So let's say these goods are going to ship or start loading from tomorrow onwards. Couple of other fields that we can specify if we need to apply the landed cost based on measurement and so on. So that created container one here. Now similarly, let's put these additional 50 quantities into another container. Shipping container type, again, we are taking this. Ship date, specified, put in any other details, click OK. So here, this is how we create the voyage and then create the containers as well. Next, what we are going to do is we are going to see what kind of costs have been added at this point to the voyage. So nothing has been posted from a general ledger perspective, but we just want to see what kind of costs have been defaulted based on our setups. So let's go back to our voyage, which is this. And here, if we click on voyage cost, here we can see that we have a fuel surcharge that we've defined, which is fixed $40 for the entire voyage. Similarly, we can go to other aspects as well. So if you want to see, are there any freight charges with respect to the shipping container? So we can click on shipping containers here. Here in this case, we are selecting container one. We can click on voyage cost. And here we can say there is a freight cost that have been defined, which is $400. If you look at the other container, we will also see that $400 is defined on the second container as well. Now, there may be cost, we looked at just the cost associated with voyage, associated with container. Now, there may be costs that are associated with the items as well, such as duty. So if you want to look at those costs, we can click on cost inquiry. And here we can see that this is our total cost. So here we can see for container one, we have 2 items, and system has calculated the landed cost. Now, if you want to see how these costs, what comprises this cost, we can click on view here, and either we can look at it by shipping container or by reference or by cost code, which is whether it's freight, fuel, surcharge, duty, etc. So here the system tracks everything at a granular level. So here we can see our item A001, there is duty of 5%, whereas on other item, we have set up the duty of 10%, which equates to $240. The freight automatically is being distributed across all the items that are in that shipping container. So here we have total of $400, so 80 have been allocated to item 1, and then 320 have been allocated to item 2 as well. Now, if you need to look at the total, what is the total landed cost for this specific container, for this specific voyage, without getting into the details of what is it by item, etc. That can be looked here as well. So we can click on cost inquiry here at a voyage level, and here everything is broken down right now, but we can click on view, turn off some of these parameters, and then this would tell us what is the total cost. So in this case, we can see we have $1,140 approximately for the entire voyage. Next, what we will do is we created the voyage. We wanted to understand, or we want to show you what is the impact on the purchase order and how does that look like. So let's go back to our purchase order. So this is our purchase order, and I have not refreshed the screen yet. Since then, we have created the voyage. So now if we were to refresh the screen, here we can see automatically 2 additional lines have been added, and that represents the delivery schedule because we splitted this item into 2 containers. Whereas this item is still coming in full, so we didn't need to split this out. As part of landed cost, we have introduced a tab here, which is landed cost. It kind of tells us to which voyage the specific item is belongs to. So here, what we will do next is look at what is, considering the goods are being loaded, and we have received the invoice for the goods from the vendor, and we want to record that invoice into our system and take the legal ownership of those goods as well. So in order to do that, we switch back to the voyage. Select the voyage, and on manage, click on post invoice. Now, this posting of invoice step can be performed depending upon your delivery terms. In our case, we were using EXW, which means when goods are being loaded, we are taking the ownership. But depending upon whether it's FOB or other delivery of terms, you can decide when to post the invoices so that estimated landed cost and the legal ownership of goods can be recorded in Dynamics 365. So here, specify the invoice number, put in the invoice description, put in the date of the invoice, and here we can see all the goods are all the items are here along with quantities. We can verify the unit prices, etc., depending upon the invoice that we have received. The important thing to note here is that on the top, this default from should be ordered quantity in order for these lines to show up. We'll quickly do match status, and then we'll post the invoice. What this would do is it will post the invoice for the purchase order, and it will post the estimated landed cost that we have reviewed so far. Previously, it was not posted. Now, as part of posting the invoice, the landed cost will be recorded in the ledger as well. So let's see how does that invoice looks like, how the cost is being recorded from a landed cost perspective. So in order to understand that, let's go back to the purchase order. So first thing to note here, now the purchase order status is invoiced. When we look at the invoice, here we can see the purchase order invoice is there. We can look at the lines if we need to, but here we are more interested in voucher. So here we can see that we have we have posted the purchase price have been posted directly to the AP, whereas the landed cost, estimated landed cost, have been posted to the landed cost clearing account. So we have specified different accounts where, depending upon the type of cost, whether it's freight or whether it's fuel surcharge or duty, or in some cases sampling as well, where those invoices needs to be posted when the vendor invoice is being recorded. From an inventory perspective, we can see that it's not only considering the purchase price, but also the landed cost, estimated landed cost as well. So goods in this case is appropriately capturing the estimated landed cost along with the purchase price. Next, what we will do is we will review the goods in transit order. One of the benefits that Aaron mentioned, that we get with the help of the landed cost module is the goods in transit. So how do we see those goods? So in order to see those orders, we can go back to the Voyage, and here we can click on General tab, goods in transit orders. So what system did in this specific case is, considering we had 2 items and one of the item was plated, so there were a total of 3 lines on our containers. So system automatically created 3 goods in transit orders. So in this case 22, 23, and 24, so that when the goods do arrive in our warehouses, we are able to receive them with the help of mobile device, considering we are using the advanced warehouse management. The posting of invoice also had a couple of other impact on the Voyage as well. So here we can see, first of all, if we look at the shipping containers, here we can have our items, and here are our items. So if you want to look at what exactly happened from an inventory perspective, we captured the financial side that we reviewed from invoice perspective. What exactly is going on with the inventory transactions, as well as how on-hand inventory is being reflected. So if we select a particular item and look at inventory transactions, here we can see that now we have introduced another reference, which is goods in transit. So if you look at this holistically, we can see that we have purchased the goods. So the status of inventory transaction is purchased. Subsequently, we have moved it to the water. So that's where these warehouses 24 GIT goods in transit, they are coming in picture. And now once the goods arrive, we'll be able to receive. So we can see that as far as warehouse 24 is concerned, if someone were to look at in the warehouse, we can still see that the goods are still on order. But if we need to look at how much inventory is there in transit right now, we can just look at it from look at it in our warehouse, which is 24-GIT, and that would show the summary or the quantities that are actually on the water. Next, as part of this process, is how do we go about tracking our inventory when it's actually loaded, or when the load is being completed, when it will sail, etc. So in order to do that, we need to go back to the Voyage. So here we are at the Voyage, and on the General tab, we can click on Tracking. Here we can see these are the different legs or different modes of transportation, or different activities to say that would happen. So first goods will be loaded, then they will sail, clear customs, and then finally the local transportation. Here we can see that these legs, the records are duplicated, and that is to track the individual container dates as well. In case one of the container gets stuck in, let's say, customs, the tracking when those goods will be available in our warehouse can change. So in order to provide that visibility directly on purchase order, there is functionality provided by landed cost module. Now, if all the containers are following the same schedule, then what we can do is, instead of updating the dates here in the grid, we can utilize these buttons on the top that can help us update the start date as well. Now, before we start putting in these dates, let's look at purchase order and see what delivery date do we see as far as the purchase order is concerned. So going back to the purchase order, here we can see on the delivery date is defined, but confirmed delivery date at this point is blank. Let's go back to our voyage and let's start the loading process as it has been confirmed by our vendor. So click on update start date. Automatically the leg and the activity gets loaded. We put in the date, let's say 9/23. And hit OK. So automatically what system would do is would determine the lead time that we have already set up in the system, calculate these dates and come up with a date by which we are expecting these goods in our warehouse. So in this case, we are expecting goods on 11/3. If we come back here, refresh the screen, we can see here that the confirmed delivery date is now 11/3. Now, let's say the loaders were quick, and instead of 3 days, we got the confirmation that the load was actually completed on 9/23 itself. So we can click on update actual end date, specify date of 9/23, click OK. Now, since we are 2 days ahead of schedule, here we can see the dates have automatically been adjusted. So now we are expecting the goods on 10/31. So automatically, if we go back to the purchase order, refreshes it, we can see that the confirmed delivery date has been updated. So updating the inbound tracking at a container level, at a voyage level, automatically updates all associated purchase orders and its respective items with those confirmed delivery dates. So if there are any processes that are dependent on confirmed delivery date, they would continue to work as well. We won't be, for our demonstration, we won't be going through and updating all these dates, but the process would be similar, and automatically, the dates would keep changing. Now, one other aspect is here when we look at the voyage status. So previously the voyage status was created, and now it's goods in transit. So the status is, the system does provide you ability to set up when the status of voyages should be automatically updated. So as and when you performed different actions in the system, your voyages statuses can be changed as well. And all the statuses, all the legs, all the activity, journey templates, all that is configuration. So it's depending upon your requirements. That's something that you can define. Now let's look at next. So far what we have done is posted the invoice. The goods are in transit. Let's say we started receiving the landed cost invoices, and what we have received, the first one is the freight cost. So let's see, how do we go about recording the actual freight invoice, and how do we allocate it to the specific voyage? In order to record the invoices, the landed cost invoices, we would just use the invoice journal. Create a quick invoice journal here, go to lines, specify the vendor from which we are receiving the invoice, put in the invoice date, put in the invoice number, and put in whatever that invoice is for. So in this case, let's say we received the invoice for shipping containers, and it's $900 in this case. Now, once this information has been entered, we can click on functions and select voyage cost. What this would do is it would allow us to assign these 900 costs to a specific voyage, and which in turn will automatically do the reconciliation based on what was defined, what was estimated versus what is actual. So we can look at voyage and select our voyage. So voyage number 10, hit OK. It would automatically determine or automatically bring in all the landed costs that have been associated with this specific voyage. Here we can see, we have duty, sampling, freight, and fuel. Sampling is something that we did not see earlier because the setup behind the sampling, we have specified that we just want to post it to GL. We do not want it to be accrued or added to the landed cost. Here we can click on distribute and specify, what we have received. So this specific invoice is for freight and it's for $900. Click OK. So here now we can see our estimated was 400. And now system automatically, considering you put in 900, automatically allocated that amount across both containers. Hit OK and post the invoice. The GL accounts where we are posting the differences between the landed cost clearing have automatically been defined as part of those charge code or cost types as well. So now we have posted the landed cost. Let's see what really happened from an estimated landed cost perspective. Whether it got reversed and the actual got allocated. This is more or less just an AP entry, but let's look at it from container level. What exactly has happened? So in order to see that, let's go back to our voyage. Go to our shipping containers. And here we can click on the voyage cost. So here we can see the estimated was 400. The actual cost is recorded. So everything is being recorded, in different shapes and different forms as well. When we look at the inquiries, so first of all, we can, if you want to see, OK, these actual costs, how have we gotten that? We can click on invoices. It will provide us the invoice number as well as what amount is contributing to this specific container. We can also look at what was the estimated adjustments. So originally it was only $400. So we can see they have automatically been reversed. When we look at the actual adjustments, here we can see since we posted $450, automatically system associated it with both the items. So $360 to item 2 and $90 to item 1 have automatically been distributed. So next, let's say the goods have finally arrived in our warehouses. How do we go about receiving those goods in our warehouse? So in order to do that, I'll bring up the mobile device that is applicable and works with our advanced warehouse. So here we have various options. So we can just receive, either we can do two-step process, receive the goods in transit first and then later do a put away, or we can do it together in one step as well by using goods in transit, receive and put away. So here we would need the voyage number. So we would need, what the voyage is, what the container is, what the item is, and the quantity is. So let's quickly go and grab our voyage number. So in this case, our voyage number is number 10. The voyage number, put in the container number, or scan the container number, put in the item number. How much quantity are we getting? So in this case, we are getting the full quantities. And once everything is good, user confirms. So that completes the receiving. Now comes the put away part. Here we can specify the location. So system is based on our location directive. System is automatically proposing that we put it to this location. So we can just scan the location to confirm the put as well. Now we can scan the other item. So in our case, we had 2 items in there. Put in the quantities, confirm those, put it in the location, confirm, and that's put away is complete for that specific container. Similarly, what we can do is we can go about receiving the second container as well. So let's quickly see how that would look like. In the shipping container, putting in the item, putting in the quantity. So let's say we only got 45 quantities. Confirm the location. Here we only received 45 quantities, whereas our voyage has total of 50. So we do have the shipping container complete functionality as well. So now if we mark it, system automatically recognize, oh, there was a discrepancy. There is a discrepancy between what was expected to be received and what we have received so far. And prompt user for under delivery will be generated, and once user confirms, a transaction is automatically created in the system. So let's go back and quickly look at what transactions have been generated by shipping container complete and receiving the quantity showed. So if you go back to our landed cost module, we can see here we have our delivery and over and under transactions. Here now we can see for our voyage number 10, we are 5 quantities short. So there are 2 options in which we can deal with this discrepancy of 5 quantities. Either we can create a purchase order, return purchase order, and that would initiate the return process and so on. Or considering the quantity discrepancy so small, we may want to just write it off completely. So we can, in this case, we will just be writing it off. So we can click on create movement, specify the quantity, and specify the appropriate reason, whether they got damaged or short shipped by vendor or whatever the reason is, and click OK. And then automatically system created the movement journal and have posted it as well. So if we just look at the movement journal, here we can see, if we look at inventory transactions, automatically these 5 transactions are kind of removed from our under warehouse. We covered a lot throughout the entire demo. How does this thing work? So we wanted to review a couple of quick configurations. The first one is journey template. So this is the journey template that we use. Here we can see there were 4 different legs that have been specified. So there is a lot of flexibility wherein if you can either build these ahead of time, or let's say for a particular voyage at a particular transportation method or particular leg needs to be added, that can be added directly on the voyage as well. We also have concept of legs. So when we look at a specific leg, so let's say 10 load, here we can specify, so based on the loading activities, if we click on tracking control center, based on, we saw that we have specified the lead time. System was automatically calculating the lead times and the dates, and the system was automatically updating the statuses as well. So this is where we specify our lead times. So in this case, we can see, the lead time for loading is 3 days. The last important point here that we wanted to cover as part of today's demo is the auto cost. So we saw, how costs were being applied to the voyage, to container, to items, and so on. So the auto cost basically let us apply the landed cost, or define the landed cost at different areas. So it can be at a voyage level, container level, folio, purchase order, item, transfer order, and so on. And here you do get different criteria. So whether it's applicable to all shipping companies or specific shipping companies. So there is concept of table group all from Dynamics 365 that's still applicable here. On the right hand side, you get specify what those cost types are that controls the GL accounts, and then how those costs needs to be allocated. So if we quickly look at what is specified behind fuel, we can see here the item is getting debited, the vendor will be credited, and we also specified the clearing accounts as well. Another important point to understand is that the landed cost module works with different costing methods. So whether it being the standard cost or the other inventory valuation methods within Dynamics 365. So that concludes our demonstration. Now I'll hand it over back to Aaron for the rest of the presentation. Over to you, Aaron.
Great, thanks, Satish. Just working on sharing my screen now. If you could just let me know when you can see it.
Yes, all good.
Okay, great. Thanks, Satish. All right, so the next topic I wanted to cover for today's call was a little bit about transfer orders. So as you saw, we went through a pretty thorough example of a purchase order. I just wanted to spend a few minutes on transfer orders as well. So just from a high level, transfer orders are supported by the landed cost module. So works on both inbound purchase order or transfer orders. One major point of difference between the two is that transfer orders do not have a concept of a goods in transit order, just because there is no concept of an AP invoice, right? Where there is no ownership change in the goods related to transfer orders. It's literally moving within a single legal entity from one warehouse to another warehouse. And so it allows for the accruing of those additional transportation costs in the cost of the items, but you're not required to use that goods in transit functionality to get that to work. Just a small note as well, I've seen questions in the past about this, is that it does work with the advanced warehousing enabled in both the from warehouse and the to warehouse. So just a quick snippet there on how that actually ends up working. So you do get in the transfer order, you would ship confirm out of the shipping warehouse, and you'd have an outbound load in that warehouse. And then what you'd want to do is set up an inbound voyage for the receiving warehouse in that scenario. All right, so that's what I wanted to get covered as it relates to transfer orders from a high level. Next topic that we wanted to cover would be the landed cost or the voyage functionality, compare contrast versus what's available in transportation management with inbound loads. So you can use TMS as I've mentioned a couple of different times, right? So we have the concept of inbound and outbound loads in transportation management. Although the landed cost provides some of the basic functionality as TMS for inbound operations, obviously we saw that it adds a lot as well, right? As specifically around those accruals and those automatic GL postings and the ability to track over time, et cetera, right? So in that scenario, therefore, if you're looking at using the landed cost functionality, what you'd end up doing is you'd use the TMS module for the outbound shipping, and then you'd use the landed cost module for inbound operations. So you wouldn't use the inbound load functionality. In general, we don't recommend that you use both modules together for the inbound operations. You certainly can. However, once items are placed onto an inbound load, they can't be added to a voyage. So you need to make sure that you define those rules very clearly so that you don't get, let's say, in entering purchase orders, you don't automatically get items put on the inbound loads, because now you wouldn't be able to use the landed cost functionality. So if you use the two modules together, it's very important that you don't share those same source document lines between them. All right, and then some of the key considerations I pulled from the docs article that's referenced down at the last bullet point here as well. So there's a lot of different considerations to take into account. I just pulled kind of what I thought to be like the four most important, or for you to be able to review as you're trying to make the determination of whether you want to use inbound loads or landed cost voyages. First one is that transportation management and landed cost don't share the reference data for entities such as the cost setups, journeys, legs, etc. Right, so you would need to recreate all of those setups in both of the different modules. Second point is that landed cost doesn't provide an ASN for the electronic receipt of goods. As many of you might know, inbound loads you can process an ASN, and that automatically kind of gives you your container structure, and you can receive against an ASN. As soon as you receive that ASN, you can post product receipt, or again, depending on your configurations, you can determine what you want to do when you receive that ASN information. So we have some out of the box functionality for that related to inbound loads. That same functionality does not exist for the landed cost modules. So just something to keep in mind. The other thing to also note on that second bullet point is that it also limits, using the landed cost module will limit the available options that you have for the receiving of goods. Since it is a different document type, it's a goods in transit orders document type, it's a slightly different receiving process than just a standard purchase order receiving process. And then third bullet point is that inbound loads does allow you to do rate shopping within that module. So if you have requirements around the ability to, input costs for multiple different vendors, run some rate shopping to determine lowest cost shipping provider, great. That works well out of the box for transportation management. Unfortunately, we don't have that same sort of functionality from a landed cost perspective. You do have the ability to set up the different costs and associated with each of the different vendors, and then you could choose how the shipping carrier, then you could choose your costs that are associated for your estimated costs, but we just don't have that comparison functionality. And then fourth bullet point here is just around the mechanics of how the different modules work. TMS has the concept of freight reconciliation, so you can match up freight bills in the system. So you can set up estimates on freight charges and do a reconciliation to the actual bill that you received. However, it's only matched against that vendor freight invoice, not necessarily for the landed cost or the item cost perspective. So it's not going to automatically make those item cost adjustments in the system if those numbers are different, like the landed cost module will do for us. If you have any questions on the transportation management freight reconciliation process, Satish and I's colleague Nicole Gump did an in-depth review of how that freight rating and routing and freight reconciliation, how that all kind of works. So I'll include a link in this presentation for that as well. So within a couple of days, this presentation will be posted up on the Tech Talk site, and you'll have access to this presentation, and you can follow those links. All right. Kind of final main topic that we wanted to get covered for today is just from a roadmap perspective. So first thing that's kind of coming from a what's next perspective is we will be publishing out or making available a standard set of data entities for the importing of data related to landed costs module. So if, let's say, at time of go live, you have a bunch of open voyages that you want to import into the system. Today, we don't have data entities out of the box available for you to do that work. So I believe starting in 10.022 or 10.023, we will have these data entities available for you so that you can import and export data into and out of the landed cost module. And then the second bullet point here is in the near term, planning on providing integration templates to support those third-party freight forwarder integrations. So if you are working, if you're doing a lot of importing, exporting of goods, specifically for landed cost, probably importing of goods is what we're most interested in talking about. So if you are using freight forwarders and they have integrations in place, or you have integrations in place with those freight forwarders, we'll provide a template out of the box so that you can streamline those integrations and make sure that that information is flowing between your freight forwarders and Dynamics 365. All right, so with that, I know we're right at time or just slightly over, so unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be able to take any live questions. I've been watching the panel throughout the presentation, so hopefully we were able to get your questions answered. We'll stay on a little bit following the call as well. Try to get as many of those questions answered as possible here before we close out the meeting today. So with that, just a final few slides here is that I do provide some additional reference links for you. So as I mentioned, we have the docs articles, walk through, give you detailed step-by-step kind of setup configurations within the modules. We also have a colleague from our support organization within Microsoft as well has posted out on his personal YouTube page or his Dynamics on Demand YouTube page some in-depth videos around the specifics of the setups and the configurations, and as well walks through in a separate video another scenario or another example of a purchase order and a transfer order landed cost scenarios. And then finally, have a link here to the Yammer group that we are maintaining for the landed cost functionality. So you can go out, view questions, answers, as well as have direct access to some of our colleagues from the R&D team as well for trying to get your additional questions answered going forward. So with that, I just want to thank you all for joining us here today, and been a pleasure having you. And with that, just go ahead and turn it over to Brad.
Thank you, Aaron. To all the attendees out there, I've posted a short survey link in the Q&A panel. We'd like your feedback on today's session and to hear what you'd like to see in future events. Thank you for your participation in that. As a reminder, the recording of today's session will be available on the Tech Talks Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. Finally, I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenters and our audience for joining us today. Take care, everybody.